This is SpaceTime Series 28, Episode 98, for broadcast on the 15th of August 2025. Coming up on SpaceTime, the joint American-Indian NISAR radar mission lifts off, a new hypothesis to understand the origins of the universe, and Russia says it will remain part of the International Space Station project until 2028. All that and more coming up on SpaceTime.
Welcome to SpaceTime with Stuart Gary.
The Indian Space Research Organisation ISRO has successfully launched a new joint American-Indian Advanced Synthetic Aperture Radar satellite called NISAR. The mission was launched aboard an Indian GSLV geosynchronous satellite launch vehicle from the Satish Dhawan Space Centre in Sriharikota province on the Bay of Bengal coast. Orbiting at an altitude of 747 kilometres, NISAR will help protect communities by providing dynamic three-dimensional images of the Earth in unprecedented detail. This will allow faster disaster response, better infrastructure monitoring, as well as agricultural management opportunities. Jointly developed by NASA and ISRO, NISAR will use two advanced radar instruments to track changes in Earth's forests and wetlands, monitor deformation and motion of the planet's frozen surfaces, and detect the movement of the Earth's crust down to fractions of a centimetre, a key measurement in understanding how the land surface moves before, during and after earthquakes, volcanic eruptions and landslides. The mission's two radars will monitor nearly all of the planet's land and ice-covered surfaces twice every 12 days, including areas of the polar southern hemisphere rarely covered by other Earth-observing radar satellites. And unlike optical sensors, NISAR will be able to see through clouds, making it possible to monitor surfaces during storms in both day and night. In the coming weeks, the spacecraft will begin a roughly 90-day commissioning phase. During this time, it will deploy its primary 12-metre diameter radar antenna reflector. It's this reflector which will direct and receive the microwave signals coming from the two radars. By interpreting the differences between the two radars, researchers will be able to discern characteristics about the surface below. As NISAR passes over the same location twice every 12 days, scientists will be able to evaluate how characteristics have changed over that time, revealing new insights about Earth's dynamic surfaces. This report from NASA TV.
With NISAR, we're tracking the changes of the solid Earth and how it's moving, ecosystems, ice cover, and any other thing that's changing at the scale of a centimeter on the Earth in a way that we've never been able to see before. Because of these very subtle motions we can measure, we're able to understand what's happening below the surface of the Earth at great precision. We can see subsidence, and that allows us then to manage resources of what's happening below the Earth.
Scientists want to study the movements of the Earth's surface to understand the processes that could trigger earthquakes, volcanoes, and landslides.
And that allows us then to understand risks associated with natural hazards,
which in turn can help in mitigation measures and early response. Other changes over the Earth's surface include melting of glaciers and ice sheets, changes in forest biomass, soil moisture, and shoreline changes.
It's based on radar, so it has two different frequency radars, and it basically looks through clouds and sees the surface of the Earth.
We can see day and night through clouds, and we're covering all of the land and all of the ice-covered surfaces of Earth every week. NISAR is quite unique in that it has two radars, one provided by NASA, one provided by ISRO, the Indian Space Research Organization.
NASA and ISRO have collaborated in this mission. Till last year we were there at JPL, NASA, where the radars got integrated and tested and were shipped back to India.
NISAR is measuring the changes on the Earth's surface, which are either factors or indicators of climate change. The society will also immensely benefit due to its contribution towards disaster management and providing food and water security.
These things are global problems that the global community needs to come together to resolve.
Now it looks like we are no more belonging to two different worlds, and we all belong to the space community, that's it.
there's the excitement about what we are going to learn that we didn't even anticipate we were going to learn.
And in that report from NASA TV, we heard from NASA project scientist Paul Rosen from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California. NASA science co-lead Deepak Putravu from ISRO, the Indian Space Research Organisation, NASA Deputy Project Manager Wendy Edelston from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, and NASA Deputy Project Director Chitra Rao from ISRO, the Indian Space Research Organisation. This is Space Time. Still to come, a new hypothesis to understand the origins of the universe. And Russia says it will remain part of the International Space Station until at least 2028. All that and more still to come on Space Time. Scientists have developed a revolutionary new hypothesis to try and better understand the origins of the universe without the need for speculative elements. The new idea, reported in the journal Physical Review Research, introduces a radical change in the understanding of the first moments after the Big Bang without relying on the speculative assumptions that physicists have traditionally needed to assume. For decades, cosmologists have worked under the inflationary paradigm. That's a model that suggested the universe suddenly expanded extremely rapidly through cosmic inflation in just a fraction of a second, thus paving the way for everything we observe today. Cosmic inflation is the only way scientists can explain why the universe looks the way it does today, with things looking pretty much the same in all directions. The problem is this model includes too many adjustable parameters, so-called free parameters which can be modified. Scientifically, this poses a problem, because it makes it difficult to know whether a model is truly predicting what happened or simply adapting to the data. Now, in a significant breakthrough, scientists have proposed a new model in which the early universe doesn't require any of these arbitrary parameters. Instead, it begins with a well-established cosmic state called de Sitter space, which is consistent with current observations of dark energy. De Sitter space is a theoretical concept in physics, specifically within general relativity, representing a universe with a positive cosmological constant leading to an exponential expansion. It's a maximally synthetic space, meaning it has a uniform curvature and looks the same in all locations and directions. Think of it as sort of like being an empty universe with a repulsive force, the cosmological constant, what we call dark energy, which is causing it to expand even without any matter. The new model doesn't rely on any hypothetical fields or particles such as cosmic inflation. Instead, it suggests that natural quantum fluctuations in space-time were sufficient to seed the small density differences that eventually gave rise to galaxies, stars and planets. These ripples evolve non-linearly, interacting and generating complexity over time, allowing for verifiable predictions with real data. The study's lead author, Raúl Jiménez from the University of Barcelona, says that for decades scientists have tried to understand the early moments of the universe, using models based on elements we've never observed. He says what makes this proposal so exciting is its simplicity and variability. It doesn't add any speculative elements, but rather demonstrates that gravity and quantum mechanics may be sufficient to explain how the structure of the cosmos came into being. He says understanding the origins of the universe is not just a philosophical question, but it actually helps answer fundamental questions about who we are and where we came from. This is Space Time. Still to come, Russia to remain a partner with the International Space Station until at least 2028. And later in the science report, a new study has found that walking 40 steps a minute faster could be enough to help older people improve their endurance and aerobic capacity. All that and more still to come on Space Time. The Russian Federal Space Agency Roscosmos has announced that it will remain in partnership with the International Space Station until 2028. For years now, the Kremlin has been threatening to leave the International Space Station partnership. Ongoing issues, including concerns over quality control and reliability problems with Russian segments of the orbiting outpost, have caused friction with Moscow's American, European and Japanese partners. And then there was the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which triggered major sanctions by Western nations, including cooperation in space. But somehow, the International Space Station project has remained insulated from these issues, at least to a degree. The West's disapproval of Moscow's actions in Ukraine led to Moscow announcing in 2022 that it would leave the International Space Station partnership by 2024. At the same time, the Kremlin moved forward with its plans to launch its own independent standalone space station, the ROS, or Russian Orbital Space Station. And Moscow went a step further. They announced plans to team up with their new best friend, China, to build a joint space station on the moon's surface, one which could be operational by the 2030s. The Russian Orbital Space Station's core module, known as the Science Power Module 1, was slated for launch in 2024, at which time Russia would leave the International Space Station. However, corruption within the Russian space industry, as well as ongoing construction problems and chronic funding issues, has continuously delayed the project, forcing Moscow to repeatedly delay Roscosmos's departure from the ISS partnership. Now the head of Roscosmos, Dmitry Bankanov, says Moscow will remain as a partner with the ISS until 2028. And that's just 2 years before NASA plans to deorbit the outpost in 2030 anyway. The International Space Station's first modules were launched way back in 1998. It was originally planned to remain in orbit until 2024. But the so-called American section of the space station, which also contains the Japanese and European modules, is operating fine. It's only the Russian segments which keep having leaks and other problems. As for what happens after the space station deorbits, well, several private companies are already developing plans to launch their own space stations over the next decade. And NASA, together with the European Space Agency and Japan's Aerospace Exploration Agency JAXA, are already building modules for the new Lunar Gateway space station. That'll be an orbital base in cislunar space for manned missions to the moon's surface, and eventually onto Mars and beyond. This is SpaceTime. And time now to take another brief look at some of the other stories making news in science this week with a science report. A new study claims that walking just 14 extra steps a minute faster could be enough to help older people improve their walking endurance and aerobic capacity. A report in the journal PLOS ONE looked at a small study of around 100 people living in a retirement community. The authors found that those who increased the number of walking steps they took per minute had around a 10% increase in their chances of having an improvement in their functional capacity. Engineers from the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology University have produced a new type of three-dimensionally printed titanium that's about a third cheaper than currently commonly used titanium alloys. The new research, reported in the journal Nature Communications, used readily available and cheaper alternative materials to replace the increasingly expensive vanadium. The Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology has now filed a provisional patent on their innovative approach as the team considers future commercial opportunities. Paleontologists have discovered dinosaurs from different species walking together some 76 million years ago, sort of like herds of zebras and wildebeests do in Africa today. The findings, reported in the journal PLOS ONE, represents the first evidence of multi-species dinosaur herding behaviour. The authors say the tracks showed horned ceratopsians and armoured ankylosaurs travelled together during the late Cretaceous epoch across what is now Alberta in Canada. The discovery in Canada's Dinosaur Provincial Park also includes tracks of two large tyrannosaurs walking perpendicular to the herd, suggesting a possible predator stalking behaviour. These findings are providing a rare snapshot into how these ancient animals interacted in their natural environment. Okay, time now for the silliest story of the week. And a British psychic who claims he was abducted by extraterrestrials back in the 1980s has now developed what he says is a 5-point guide to determine if you too have been the victim of an alien probing. Philip Kinsella claims he was beamed aboard an alien spaceship, stripped down, and in true alien fashion, given the sort of probing the TSA would be proud of. As to why aliens travelled light years across the galaxy just to probe him, well, that's still a bit of a mystery. Tim Mendham from Australian Skeptics says Kinsella claims many victims have had their own ET experience, but simply don't remember it because of alien mind control.
This actually was developed by someone who reckons they were abducted by reptilian aliens, and he was stripped down, probed, etc., and then he got all these sort of psychic powers. He developed these sure signs to show that you've been abducted, and I'm sure, judging by how broad they are, indicates that basically everyone's been abducted at some stage or another. Some of these are pretty strange. One is mysterious bumps under your skin. We're not talking about fatty substances. We're talking about implants, right? So you can check on them. You get an X-ray or something.
Like a pacemaker or something like that?
Yeah, something more subtle than that. If you know your X-Files, people get implants all the time for tracking you with controlling your brain. Could be as small as a grain of rice. You can check it out with X-rays just to see if it's actually there or not. So maybe you should do that. Unexplained nosebleeds. A lot of people get unexplained nosebleeds. That happens. Suddenly your nose starts bleeding.
I have never had a nosebleed.
Haven't you?
Never,
Oh, yeah.
Ever.
It's not fun when you're sitting there during a meeting and your nose starts bleeding.
Yeah.
Suddenly got to rush out and grab a hanky. You sit there looking stupid with a hanky shoved up your nose.
Tissues in each nostril.
So unexplained nosebleed. So suddenly you got this bump in your under your skin. You got your nose starts bleeding. Another one is strange flashbacks. I'm not quite sure what strange means. Actually, vivid memories of being somewhere otherworldly. Perhaps maybe there are things locked away in your brain.
Cold metal table in a dark area with
that's right, being probed.
People shoving things in places you'd rather not have them shove things.
Well, yeah, that's the irony, because lost time. Yeah, sort of. What happened to that 20 minutes? Yeah, was I just daydreaming? Last one I should add: psychic powers. If you have psychic powers, you've been abducted by aliens. So that's the one most people might not have. But if you do have it and your nose bleeds, you've probably been abducted.
It was Howard Wolowitz from Big Bang Theory who said it best as, if you're going to date someone who feels they've been abducted by aliens, because you know they don't mind a bit of probing.
Yeah, good old Wolowitz. And he went to space.
And if you Google on YouTube, hear an astronaut scream for 8 minutes, it's there. They actually did it. Wolowitz screaming for 8 minutes in the Soyuz capsule. Very funny stuff.
Okay.
That's Tim Mendham from Australian Skeptics. And that's the show for now. SpaceTime is available every Monday, Wednesday and Friday through Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcast, Pocket Casts, Spotify, Acast, Amazon Music, Bytes.com, SoundCloud, YouTube, your favourite podcast download provider, and from spacetimewithstuartgary.com. SpaceTime's also broadcast through the National Science Foundation on Science Zone Radio and on both iHeartRadio and TuneIn Radio. And you can help to support our show by visiting the SpaceTime store for a range of promotional merchandising goodies, or by becoming a SpaceTime patron, which gives you access to triple-episode commercial-free versions of the show, as well as lots of bonus audio content which doesn't go to air, access to our exclusive Facebook group, and other rewards. Just go to spacetimewithstuartgary.com for full details.
You've been listening to SpaceTime with Stuart Gary. This has been another quality podcast production from Bytes.com.